The swept wing delays the onset of these shock waves and allows the pilot to maintain control of the aircraft as his speed increases.
The tailless delta wing built on the success of the swept design. Shaped like a dart, the delta forms the basis of most modern wing designs. It transformed fighters into faster and more maneuverable planes. But what happens if things go wrong? One plane down doesn't necessarily mean you lose a good man with it.
When I knew that I had a good parachute, then I was very relieved.
Today's jet fighters are the fastest, baddest birds on the block. They can destroy any target, anytime, anywhere. That's why every army and every time has tried to blow them out of the sky. Pilots live their life on the edge, knowing that just one bullet, one error in judgment, one mechanical malfunction could end in disaster. But if the worst does happen, they always have one last chance: their parachute. Go back to World War I, and bailing out of a fighter was tricky. Pilots were issued with primitive parachutes that had to be opened before they jumped out of a plane. A device was needed which would allow the pilot to jump out and get himself to a safe distance from the plane before the parachute would open. It took the genius of a stuntman in Hollywood, Leslie Irvin. Irvin worked for the film industry, performing parachute jumps from 1,000 feet. In 1918, he invented a free-fall backpack parachute and a ripcord the pilot could pull to open the parachute when clear from the plane.
The idea is that instead of having to drop out of an aircraft in order to parachute, you can actually jump out of it with a parachute that will subsequently open and enable you to descend safely to the ground.
Irvin's invention was adopted by air forces around the world. All told, it saved the lives of over 10,000 aviators. But parachutes on their own aren't always enough. The introduction of jet power vastly increased the speed of planes, making it virtually impossible to bail out with a parachute.
The only way to do it is to blast yourself out of the path of the plane. You want to blast away from the tail fins, you want to blast away from the wings, you just want to be away from the plane, because it's going to hurt you.
In 1938, German engineers came up with a solution. They built an ejector seat powered with compressed air. When triggered, the pilot and the seat would shoot clear of the plane. But the ejection process wasn't easy. It would involve a series of crucial steps.
The first thing is he has to bring himself in an upright position. When he activated the trigger lever, the compressed gas comes from the valve to this cannon. It creates a pressure and slides the whole seat out of the tracks from the cockpit.
Once free of the plane, the pilot had to manually open the harness, release the seat, and pull the cord to open the parachute. After the war, countries around the world carried out further research into ejector seats. In the summer of 1946, British company Martin Baker conducted the first live flight test ejections.
As the seat leaves the plane, the stabilizing drogue preventing the seat turning over in the air opens and then pulls out.
Ejecting closer to the ground was still a challenge. A more propulsive force was needed to fire the pilot high enough for his parachute to safely open. In 1960, Martin Baker came up with the underseat rocket.
Watched by members of the world's press and observers from the United States, Doddy Hay pulled the face blind, which resulted in an ejection height of over 300 feet.
His design had enough explosive force to fire the seat and pilot to a safe height, even when the plane was on the ground. In the last 40 years, they have saved the lives of countless pilots. One of the lucky ones is Ralph Harrison, a Canadian Air Force starfighter pilot stationed in Germany. On a cloudy day in 1980, he went on an exercise at 1,500 feet. Just minutes into the flight, he heard a succession of explosions, followed by a deafening bang.
There was smoke going in the cockpit. So the only thing going through my head was, what do I have? Can I solve the problem? Can I fix it? And then I realized I couldn't fix it.
Known as the missile with a man in it, the stubby-winged Starfighter was the first U.S. jet fighter in service to fly Mach 2, twice the speed of sound. But soon after it entered service, it became one of the most accident-prone fighters ever produced, giving it a whole new nickname, the Widowmaker.
Because the F-104 doesn't so much have wings as it has stumps of wings, it's like a leaf, twisting and turning as it falls through the sky, but it's twisting and turning and falling through the sky twice the speed of sound.
It looked like Ralph Harrison was going to become another victim of the Starfighter curse. As his plane began to disintegrate, his only hope was his ejector seat.
After the canopy goes, the seat fires, and everything works automatic. There's a seat kicker. It actually throws you out of the seat. And then the parachute opens, and this whole sequence is about 3 seconds. So it happens pretty fast.
The Starfighter hit a field, exploding in a giant fireball. And Harrison, well, he had a great view.
I enjoyed the view, I enjoyed the parachute ride, and the trip down was quite pleasant.
Flying fighter planes is always going to be a risky business. And in dogfights, those risks go through the roof. That's why the evolution of combat tactics is one of the most important branches on the fighter's family tree.
When a pilot finds himself with an airplane at his 6 o'clock, he knows he's in very serious trouble at that point.
In the 21st century, jet fighters are multifunctional. Ground attack, air defense, intercepting. They've got all the bases covered. Rewind to World War I, and combat aviation was a lot simpler. No bombs, no rockets, just guns and chaos. There were no rules. No one had fought a war from the air. Pilots learned their craft by trial and error. But then in September 1916, German fighter ace Oswald Belke published the Dicta Belke, a guide for air-to-air combat. His tactics were simple. Number 1, always attack from behind. The enemy can't see you, and he can't shoot back. Number 2, place yourself between the sun and the enemy. This blinds him for a few seconds, and he can't aim accurately.
But the classic dogfight is basically a turning fight to position one aircraft on the tail of the other. When a pilot finds himself with an airplane at his 6 o'clock, as the term goes, he knows he's in very serious trouble at that
point. 30 years later, planes were faster and more maneuverable. But Belke's principles still applied to the ballet in the skies.
Before the Second World War, some theorists thought that the era of dogfighting would be impossible because airplanes were moving in excess of 300 miles per hour.
Targeting became a combination of guesswork and basic deflection. This involved firing the guns into the space ahead of the target to allow for the speed of the enemy plane and the speed of the bullets. If a fighter plane did find itself in a tight corner, very often it would perform a split S. The pilot would invert the plane, execute a half loop, and end up flying level in the opposite direction.